Final Fantasy. A video game series that was born as a last-ditch effort of a developer that desperately wanted to succeed in the gaming industry has now become one of the longest running and most successful video game franchises to ever exist. Counting 15 mainline titles and a ton of side games, the series is still going strong and is showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon despite nearing its 36th birthday. Something that immediately sticks out when looking at the different games is that throughout the series' long running time, change was always an important element that was readily embraced, with the many different titles seeing changes even to previously established core elements, such as design, atmosphere, and even gameplay elements. Despite all that, the series still managed to build a fantastic reputation for itself through its iconic characters, massive and beautiful worlds, and its epic storytelling. And though each and every title can perfectly be enjoyed as a standalone game, today we will take a thorough look at each one of the mainline titles and their respective rarest achievement, and then rank them in order from most commonly unlocked to least commonly unlocked. That way, we will be able to figure out which one of the games holds the rarest achievement in all of Final Fantasy. Please note that we will always look at the earliest released version of any game that came with implemented achievements, and that we also won't factor in any of the DLC related trophies. So, with all of that said, hop on your chocobo and get as comfortable as you possibly can, while we go on an exhaustive journey in search for the rarest achievement in all of Final Fantasy, and we'll dive well below the 1% completion rate as we work our way through the different titles. We are starting our list off with Final Fantasy XIII-2 and the Anomalous achievement with a completion rate of 11.9%, immediately putting us into the very rare section. To unlock the Anomalous trophy, you will have to witness every possible paradox ending. Remember how I said that Final Fantasy is known for its epic storytelling? Well, that might have been a bit of an understatement, because besides fighting mighty villains, colossal beasts, literal gods, and puddings, there's also the element of time traveling and alternative timelines in the game, which doesn't exactly help when it comes to understanding the requirements for this achievement. But to try and simplify it very much, after you complete your first playthrough, you get the option to travel back in time and revisit places you've previously been at. This time, however, with the ability to make entirely different choices than you initially did, which in turn can trigger entirely different events than you previously saw and lead to different paradox endings. While that sounds easy enough on paper, and some of these endings can indeed be triggered by just choosing a single different choice during a dialogue, the majority of them require quite a bit of work to trigger. Take for example the A Giant Mistake ending. To unlock this ending, you have to defeat Atlas, a colossal boss that truly honors its name and can do massive damage while simultaneously taking a ton of hits. During your first playthrough of the game, the story guides you towards a mysterious device which you can activate to significantly weaken him, which is realistically the only way you can ever beat this giant at that point in time. If you want to unlock the paradox ending I just described, however, you will have to travel back in time after beating the game and take Atlas on without using the device and weakening him first, making the fight a hell of a lot harder than it was the first time around, since you now have to face the monster at the peak of its strength. Only once you've beaten the colossal machine will you be rewarded with the A Giant Mistake ending, which is just one out of 9 different paradox endings. So to say that the game will really make you work for these optional endings and the Anomalous achievement would be an understatement, as the other 7 endings I haven't even mentioned yet either require a set of very specific choices and actions during conversations with NPCs, or will simply have you fight even worse bosses than Atlas was, while ensuring that all the odds are stacked against you. Not to mention that the last and secret ending requires you to find 160 different collectibles before you can even attempt to unlock it, meaning that you will have to beat every single side quest and explore every inch of the environment to get the needed collectibles. And considering that I've rambled on for a while now, but have still not even mentioned the majority of things you need to do to get all of the paradox endings, really proves that Anomalous is a very, very tough achievement. So be prepared to spend many hours with time traveling back and forth and taking on lots of challenges if you do want to earn the rarest achievement in Final Fantasy XIII-2. Coming in at rank 15, we have Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Reunion with the Good Match for Arif achievement and a completion rate of 11.2%. Thankfully, this achievement is much more straightforward than the previous one we talked about, and can all be wrapped up in one go. During your playthrough in Chapter 4, a kid named Bruno will steal your wallet from you, and your party will naturally try to find the kid and retrieve your money. However, if you also want to earn the achievement in question while going after the thief, you need to fulfill lots of different things in a very specific manner so that you can sack some sympathy points from Arif. Some are quite logical, and you may even happen to do them naturally, like talking to all of the different shop owners in search of a clue for the whereabouts of the thief, or agreeing to buy Bruno some medicine once you actually find him. Other things you have to do are sadly not that intuitive, such as confirming that you're going to wait for a girl to come back 10 times in a row,
That's it! How far did she have to go?
And doing a fantastic job at 2 different minigames by hitting the highest score in both of them. Be careful though, as getting a low score and consequently crafting horrible perfumes in the respective minigame will actually remove some of the affection score you managed to build up with the other tasks. But if you closely follow a guide of your choice that will guide you through the process and master the minigames, the thief will eventually comment that Zack and Arif make a nice couple, and the trophy will subsequently pop. And if you're now rightfully asking yourself how in the world this achievement is more rare than the one from Final Fantasy XIII 2 we previously mentioned, I have not a single clue either. Let's move on. Next up, we have Final Fantasy VIII with the Timber Maniacs achievement and a completion rate of 10.9%. Timber Maniacs is all about collectibles, requiring you to get 12 issues of an identically named fictional magazine. And while finding 12 collectibles may seem like a very small burden compared to the other achievements we've looked at so far, let's just take a moment to clarify a few things. Final Fantasy VIII originally released in 1999, meaning the game is nearing its 25th birthday. And while the 8th part of the Final Fantasy series we're looking at right now is a remaster and therefore looks much nicer than its origin, the game, at its core, is still very much the same as it was in 1999. In terms of collectibles, that means that they are really damn well hidden and won't occasionally sparkle like they do in games nowadays. Due to its unspectacular nature, it can be incredibly difficult to spot it if you're not using a guide right away, especially given the fact that you need to find 12 of these ordinary little things and they're often hidden in the middle of a pretty cluttered environment, or can even be entirely missable if you don't pick them up right away. Now, while all these factors speak in favor of the low completion rate that Timber Maniacs achievement has, realistically, all of these problems can be resolved with one quick Google search or a good guide by your side. If you do that and consistently keep an eye out for the different collectibles, then the rarest achievement in Final Fantasy VIII becomes very, very simple to obtain. So whatever the reason for the low completion rate may be, make absolutely sure that you're one of the people that will pick this trophy up with ease. Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin takes the 13th rank on this list with the Stranger's Memories trophy and a completion rate of 10.7%. Rather than being memorable for its fantastic story or intriguing enemies, this title became famous solely due to the very limited vocabulary of the protagonist.
Mission is to kill Chaos. When are we gonna fight Chaos? Chaos, Chaos, Chaos.
To earn Stranger's Memories, you need to complete every single side quest the game has to offer. You may have noticed that the description of the achievement is very straightforward, but there's actually a bit more to it than what meets the eye. Namely, that to even get to the side missions themselves, you need to first find hidden collectibles in the different environments that the main missions lead you through. These collectibles, or memory mementos as they're called, are vessels that contain the actual side quests, are generally pretty well hidden, and need you to either stray from the main path and thoroughly explore your surroundings, or interact with certain elements of the environment in specific ways so you can get to them. Each of those memory memento orbs contain different side missions which will become available once you've collected them. All in all, there are a total of 24 side quests, with 21 of them being available right as you play through the game, and 3 of them only popping up once you've beaten the main story. As for the quests themselves, they can have varying objectives. While some of them require you to kill multiple waves of different monsters, others ask you to collect certain items. And then again, there are quests where you need to destroy certain objects to complete them. Generally speaking though, you will find yourself running through sparsely lit dungeons and killing lots of different monsters during all of those quests. And that may be the reason why lots of different players lost interest midway through and didn't actually finish all of the 24 side missions that are required to get the Stranger's Memories trophy. So make sure that you're absolutely dedicated and can deal with the chaos before you sink lots of hours into Stranger of Paradise. Best of luck to you. Taking the 12th spot on our list, we have Final Fantasy XV with the Angling Expert achievement and a completion rate of 9.5%. And believe me when I say that our streak of bizarre achievements is still not over. To get the rarest achievement in the newest part of the Final Fantasy series, you won't have to do any demanding side quests, won't have to collect magazines, nor deal with time traveling. For this entry, all you need to do is to become a very, very dedicated fisherman. Sounds weird? Well, let me explain. As you surely know, every member of the party you control in Final Fantasy XV has a different skill he excels at. For Noctis, this skill is fishing, which brings us back to the Angling Expert achievement. To earn it, you need to raise his fishing level to 10, which you obviously can do by fishing. Lots of fishing. A recommended spot to effectively grind this achievement out is the Vesper Pool area, where you can also buy one of the most efficient rods right away. With that rod, and during certain times of the day, you have a higher chance of encountering rare fish. And that's pretty important, because rare fish, such as the cherrycomb trout, which you can reliably catch in the morning before 10 AM, give you more XP and will raise your overall fishing skill faster than regular fish. All in all, you will have to do about 4 hours of fishing before you hit the required maximum level and will pop the achievement. That is literally all there is to it. Do you, by chance, want to know what the second rarest achievement in Final Fantasy XV is? Well, let me tell you. reaching maximum cooking level in a very similar and uncomplicated manner. Meaning that the two rarest achievements in this game are both mindless minigames which can be pulled off very easily and require no thought or real effort whatsoever. And do you by chance want to know what the third rarest achievement is? Beating a colossal turtle that is carrying an entire mountain on its shell takes hours of intense focus and active gameplay to beat it, and will near one-shot your party if you make any mistake whatsoever. And despite all that, statistically, people actually prefer dragging themselves through a 4-hour-long fight with a turtle rather than doing some fishing. Honestly, I've already been baffled by the last 3 entries and their respective achievements too, as even in those games there were much harder achievements than those that turned out to be the rarest ones. But Final Fantasy XV truly takes the cake when it comes to players finishing the hard stuff but not bothering with simple tasks, and leaves me absolutely clueless as to why that is. Maybe you guys are just really weird and truly prefer hacking away at a giant turtle for hours on end without making a single mistake, rather than just catching some fish. But that's alright, I love you all the same. Anyway, let's look at the next entry. The Final Fantasy XIII trilogy is back once more, this time with Lightning Returns and the Expert Shieldsmith trophy that currently sits at a completion rate of 8.1%. To unlock this specific achievement, you will have to modify shields 30 times. Once again, the description of the achievement itself is very straightforward, but there's a bit more to it than the first impression gives away. For starters, you will only unlock the ability to actually upgrade shields and swords once you have completed the game, have beaten the final boss, and have seen the epilogue. Once you've started over on New Game Plus, armory vendors will now offer you the option to upgrade your shields and swords, implying of course that you have the necessary material to do so, meaning that getting this achievement will undoubtedly involve some grinding once again. Another important thing you should keep in mind is that doing 30 upgrades to a single weapon in one sole go will only count as one modification overall. So even if you are in possession of the necessary materials, you really shouldn't level the weapon to the highest possible upgrade right away. Instead, despite being a bit annoying, make sure that you actually do each upgrade manually, so that you won't unnecessarily waste materials. And despite Expert Shieldsmith being what is probably the most unspectacular achievement ever, the developers were actually kind enough to give you 2 achievements for the same process. There are even 2 more waiting for you if you do the exact same upgrades in the exact same way to your swords instead. So if you do own Lightning Returns and have already completed the game anyway, you may actually really want to consider getting these 4 achievements, especially since the Expert Shieldsmith is a pretty rare one and requires little to no effort at all for you to get. The original Final Fantasy VII takes the 10th spot on our list with the Best Bromance achievement and a rarity of 7.9%. Now, this achievement is simply hilarious, because to unlock it, you need to go on a date with none other than the one and only Grumpy Muscle Mountain Barret. To give some more context, at some point during your playthrough of Final Fantasy VII, one of the other party members will inevitably knock on the door of Cloud's room and ask him out on a date. Now what you have to do to unlock the Best Bromance trophy is to simply make absolutely sure that it's not one of these very pretty women that collectively are responsible for terabytes of lewd drawings on the internet and for crashing an Italian government meeting, but rather that it is the one and only Barret who knocks on the door and asks Cloud for a romantic walk at night. To kick things off, let's just say that the odds of that happening to you naturally are very, very unlikely. Because while all the other party members you could potentially go on a date with start off with quite some affection for Cloud already, Barret is a bit of a different story. The fact that his affection towards you is literally zero means that you don't just have to impress him time after time again with different dialogue choices and behavior, but also requires you to actively go out of your way to lower the affection that the other party members have towards you. For starters, from the beginning of the game, you need to flirt with Jessie to lose some of Tifa's affection, give a flower you got from Aerith at the very start of the game to Barret's daughter, which you've literally never met before, rather than to Tifa, your childhood friend, and you need to generally just be as cold and standoffish as you can. And if you feel bad for Tifa now, then don't worry, as Aerith is the next girl in line who will need to take rejection after rejection, just so you can make absolutely sure that Barret will go on a date with you. If you're curious as to what you have to do to actually impress Barret himself, well, you have to admit that his snoring kept you up at night, which somehow makes him like you more. You have to refuse any help as you're barely holding onto a collapsed bridge and then fall down for hundreds of meters, and you need to admit to the fact that Barret is your boyfriend. Remember, these are just a few of the things you will have to do to gain Barret's favor, so I think it's fair to say that despite the rather silly nature of this achievement, you will definitely need a guide to walk you through the different steps so you can keep them all in mind. If you react as manly and stoic as you can throughout lots of different conversations and scenarios, you will eventually be able to steal Barret's heart and take him out on a date, where he then accuses you of liking his daughter and tells you to stay the hell away from her before shouting at the fireworks. But hey, at least you will officially have earned the Best Bromance achievement, and with that, the rarest achievement in all of the original Final Fantasy VII. Next up, we have Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, with the An Adventurous Life trophy and a completion rate of 5.8%. As you know, Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, is an online exclusive title that has been around for nearly 10 years and has shown no signs of slowing down whatsoever. Though the term multiplayer exclusive is every achievement or trophy hunter's nightmare, it's actually not all that bad in the case of Final Fantasy XIV. But let's start at the beginning. To earn the rarest achievement in this title, you will have to complete 1000 Leaf quests. Leaf quests are optional quests that you can encounter throughout the different zones you traverse through. Completing them will reward you with pieces of gear, money, experience, and some other useful rewards. As for the quests themselves, they can actually vary a lot, having you do things like collecting materials, delivering certain items you crafted to a specific NPC, or they may also ask you to get rid of some of the monsters that are bothering the people in a certain area. And while that all seems pretty standard, there is a bit of a catch when it comes to Leaf quests, because rather than just being able to do 1000 side quests in one go, which in and of itself would already be an incredibly tedious task, there is one more additional burden you will have to deal with: allowances. You see, Leaf quests come with a certain restriction. While the first 100 levels can be done immediately without any limitation whatsoever, the remaining 900 are a different story, because you will only have a certain amount of allowances that, once depleted, will only refresh at a rather slow rate. The allowances also cap at 100, which means that you can't just stop playing the game for months and come back to near infinite allowances waiting for you either, but you will actually have to check in every now and then to avoid letting precious allowances go to waste while you get the remaining quests done. Meaning that these 900 quests will take you quite a while to finish. As for the Leaf quests themselves, given that you need to beat 1000 of them, you may want to go for the simplest ones, and luckily, there's a perfect quest to make the grind somewhat more bearable. In the Horizon region, you can take on a Tradecraft Left quest, in which you need to deliver 3 potions to an NPC. The good thing is that the NPC in question is literally standing right next to the quest giver, so depending on your skill and routine, it is actually completely possible to boil the whole process down to about 20 seconds, which means you can theoretically get 100 quests done in a matter of 35 minutes. But the keyword here is theoretically, as your limited allowances will not make it possible to do so. Guides mention that even if you work as efficiently as possible, the An Adventurous Life achievement will take you a minimum of 167 days to finish, making this hands down the grindiest achievement by far that we've looked up until now. But honestly, the fact that 5.8% of all players have gotten this trophy despite all the factors I just mentioned may actually be a very good sign and a pretty clear indicator that the game is in fact fun enough to stay around for a long enough time to get the achievement done. Because if we're being honest, I am sure that we've all seen achievements that were way easier to do than this one, sitting at a much lower completion rate. But be that as it may, if you want to count yourself among the proud owners of the An Adventurous Life trophy, then it won't be anytime soon and you will have to show extraordinary patience and dedication for almost half a year. Best of luck to you. Coming in at rank 8, we have Final Fantasy Type 0 HD with the A Lonely Battle achievement, which sits at a 5.4% completion rate. To earn the rarest trophy in this title, you need to earn the identically named Lonely Battle bonus, which you get by only using 2 party members during a battle. If you have not played Final Fantasy Type 0 yet, this may seem confusing, as a party of 2 is not all that uncommon and has actually occurred pretty often throughout the rest of the series. But it does start to make sense considering that there's a roster of 14 people in Type 0 which you're normally very much encouraged to use. Combine that with the fact that you'll often be faced with tons of hard-hitting and swift enemies, and you can see why this trophy may seem rather unappealing. Thankfully though, there's an incredibly easy way to get the rarest achievement in this title, which is why I won't beat around the bush and get straight to it. Final Fantasy Type 0 has a replay feature, which makes it possible for you to visit missions you've already beaten once more. If you take advantage of that feature and restart the first mission on the easiest difficulty, while simultaneously using 2 of your party members that should now be at a pretty high level, then you will easily be able to beat the level within 2 or 3 minutes and immediately pop the rarest achievement right away. Fun fact, there are 2 more trophies which you can cheese the exact same way. One of them for beating a chapter with just 1 of your party members, and the other one for using a party of 3. So if you do own Final Fantasy Type 0, make sure that you get these 3 very rare trophies in a very quick and easy manner as soon as you possibly can. Things are about to get a whole lot harder, and with that, a whole lot more rare as well. May I present to you the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which fittingly takes the 7th spot on our list with the Hardened Veteran Trophy, which has a completion rate of 3.7%, making it the first ultra rare achievement on this list. As you surely know, the Final Fantasy VII Remake was a huge success and both critics as well as longtime fans really enjoyed it. One reason for that may be the fact that the game did not pull any punches when it came to the hardest difficulty mode, which is exactly what you have to best if you want to get the ultra rare Hardened Veteran Trophy. For starters, the only way you can even access access the hardest difficulty is by first beating the roughly 33-hour-long story on one of the difficulty options that you're initially given. It has to be said at this point that even on normal difficulty, Final Fantasy VII is not something you'll just breeze through, and you may actually find yourself utterly defeated at certain encounters. Once you've managed to beat the game for the first time though, you can finally start a new playthrough on the hard difficulty and will immediately notice that things have gotten much tougher. For example, all the items, an entire gameplay element that could previously seriously save your butt and get you out of tricky fights, have been disabled and no longer exist on the hardest difficulty. Your enemies are naturally a lot stronger and tank lots of hits before they're finally defeated, and MP, which allows for you to use magical attacks which are sometimes the only way you can hurt certain enemies, will not just regenerate when you sit on a bench like it did on other difficulty, but it actually has to be tediously gathered by destroying stuff in the environment. Another point I just have to mention due to how much of an issue it can become are the many different and extremely hard boss fights you will encounter during your playthrough. Make absolutely sure that you know the weaknesses and patterns of your enemies inside out before even attempting to fight them, because the last thing you will want to do on this difficulty is to unnecessarily waste MP or tank hits for no reason at all. All in all, the one factor which will probably decide whether or not you will be able to beat the hardest difficulty in the Final Fantasy VII Remake is if you're dedicated enough to go through the entire game once more while dealing with the fact that even small encounters can now seriously mess you up and will need you to be extremely focused on them. If you're able to deal with all that and guide our favorite spiky-haired, sword-swinging crossdresser through Midgar on even the hardest difficulty, then you will be rightfully rewarded with the ultra-rare Hardened Veteran trophy. Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, is next on our list with the Scrivener achievement that has a completion rate of 3.2%. Once again, don't let the simple description and the innocent cartoony icon fool you, as this achievement will take you dozens of hours before you come even close to finishing it. Because to earn Scrivener, you will have to complete all the entries in the bestiary. But to give some context, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, has about 211 normal enemies, which means you can encounter them by chance if you just traverse through the environment and explore while you play through the main game. Killing 211 unique enemies is certainly doable, but unfortunately, you'll quickly find that despite diligently killing all those nasty monsters, the bestiary is still missing lots of entries. Which brings us to the actual difficult part of this trophy. In Final Fantasy XII, there are lots of different enemies, which are either extremely rare to just randomly encounter while exploring, or can be straight up locked behind a specific quest set. Take for example the hunt quests, which will be given to you throughout different points in the game and ask you to hunt down certain marks. Special creatures which have been causing trouble and need to be dealt with. These hunt quests can vary greatly in difficulty, with some of them being easily doable even at a low level, and others requiring you to be at least around level 40 before they can realistically be dealt with. Next to those regular marks, there are also elite marks, which are basically the exact same concept but with a twist. The elite creatures you will meet during these quests usually have really strong abilities, which will make it a lot more difficult to take them down. Take for example the Roctoise, which will double its current level multiple times as you fight it, or the Trickster, a white chocobo which will turn invisible in the middle of combat, so that you cannot target it anymore. Next to these very unpleasant encounters, there are also bosses, rare game, which are monsters that are just incredibly unlikely to spawn and will require you to visit the same environment multiple times to find them, espers, which are extremely powerful enemies that will later act as your allies and can be summoned during tough fights, humanoid enemies, and lastly also the members of the Arcadian military, which you all need to defeat, bumping up the total number of creatures you have to kill to a whopping 384. Thankfully, there is one silver lining though, the trial mode. The trial mode is a separate game mode which lets you face 100 waves of enemies. The reason why this matters in this context is because the monsters you will kill here will automatically be added to your bestiary once you've dealt with them. And even better, rare monsters can appear in this game mode too, meaning that you won't have to scan every inch of the different environments you traverse anymore, but can rather just spam this mode and happen to find the monsters you need randomly. Realistically, the best way to deal with those 380 creatures is probably a mix of both the main game and the trial mode. So if you're still willing to put yourself through this world of pain I just described, then I wish you nerves of steel and all the possible blessings from RNGesus himself to make this incredible grind somewhat more bearable. Best of luck to you. We have made it to the top 5 of the rarest games in all of Final Fantasy, and it's only fitting that one of the biggest fan favorites of the entire series made it this far. I'm of course talking about Final Fantasy X with the Perfect Sphere Master achievement and a completion rate of 2.8%. To get this incredibly rare achievement, you need to complete the sphere grids for all the main characters. In essence, the sphere grid is basically just Final Fantasy X's version of leveling up, and with it, the distribution of sphere points you unlock that way. So for this trophy, all you will have to do is to fully fill out the sphere grid for every character. And how hard could that possibly be? Am I right? Final Fantasy X offers you a party of 7 people who each specify in different skills or attributes. Take for example Auron, who you can level up with the sphere grid to the point where he's extremely tanky, deals tons of damage and has lots of health, but will nevertheless lack things like agility and evasion due to his bulky and tanky nature. To compensate for this, you have other party members who can be trained in areas that Auron specifically is lacking in. So the idea of a sphere grid that consciously lets you choose the area which you want your characters to become really good at is in and of itself a pretty amazing idea. The problem is that you will have to complete the sphere grid for every single character, which is honestly just an insane undertaking thanks to all the possibilities you have. And if you're rolling your eyes now and think that this trophy will once more just mean you will endlessly have to grind through hordes of monsters to get the necessary XP to level up, well, you're absolutely right. You see, rather than just letting you level up and progress through the sphere grid node by node, Final Fantasy X decided to spice things up a bit more, as the sphere grid alone would definitely lack complexity if they didn't. As you level up and try to progress through the sphere grid, you will eventually come across locks of different levels. These locked nodes can only be unlocked by finding a key sphere, which is dropped by certain bosses or enemies. If you find the correct key after killing a foe, you can unlock the blocked path in the sphere and will find that this allows you to branch out way more and lets you invest in new abilities, more stats and other such things. It goes without saying, but the amazing thing about leveling up in Final Fantasy X is obviously the insane freedom of choice it gives you, letting you manually boost exactly those stats which you care most about. But with that freedom comes a lot of complexity, especially if you want to fully upgrade the sphere and consequently earn the perfect Sphere Master trophy. Thankfully, there are lots of different guides on the internet that were carefully crafted by the poor souls who already put themselves through this torture. But even with these guides by your side, you won't be safe from intense grinding that can take you up to 50 hours to complete. Considering all that, the only thing I can really tell you is that you should only take this achievement on if you consider yourself a hardcore fan of the series, or at the very least, a hardcore fan of Final Fantasy X. At rank 4, we have the younger brother of our previous title, Final Fantasy X-2, with the Tonberry's Treasure that sits at a 2.5% completion rate and requires you to obtain treasure in the Tonberry area. Ironically enough, the previous achievements we looked at did all have very straightforward descriptions, but sometimes turned out to be extremely complicated to pull off anyway. Whereas in this case, the achievement's description is pretty vague, but the process itself couldn't really be more linear at all. This is especially true because the trophy cannot be earned in Final Fantasy X-2 itself, but rather in a side game that's called Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission, which was included in the HD remastered version of this game. Final Fantasy X-2 The Last Mission has you climb a tower that consists of 80 entire levels for reasons.
It's huge. Good thing we can just fly straight to the top. Haha. Now where's the fun in that?
Luckily, despite having to make it through 80 floors, the game itself doesn't seem all that hard to me, especially considering that it's pretty short and the gameplay itself changed a lot from the main game, now being kind of a real-time, almost roguelike-ish dungeon explorer where items and enemies pop up as you progress through the different levels. One of the items you can randomly find throughout the different floors is called Secret Room Folio. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is that you need to gather at least 3 of them before you reach floor 61. What happens now is that you need to use the Secret Room Folio, which, as the name implies, lets you enter a secret room. Note that the secret room you summon must contain a formation of stones with one of them sitting in the middle. If it does not, reload and simply try again until you actually come across the needed stone formation. You need to pull this off a total of 3 times and eventually break 1 more golden rock, which will then finally make it possible for you to enter a level with 3 enormous Tonberries that you need to defeat. The Tonberries will then drop an accessory, finally earning you the Tonberry's Treasure trophy, and with it, the rarest achievement in all of Final Fantasy X-2. Compared to the previous entries that we've just looked at, I think it's fair to say that this one is a walk in the park, despite its ultra rare completion rate, which is just one more reason for you to get it if you do own the HD remaster of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2. Earning the bronze medal on our list, we have Final Fantasy XIII, the first part of the trilogy that kicked Lightning's story off, with the Treasure Hunter trophy and a completion rate of 2.2%. To earn it, you need to have held every weapon and accessory at least 1 time. And if you have been paying attention so far and looked at the other entries that we've mentioned in this video, I'm pretty sure you can imagine what that means. Namely, grinding, grinding, and more grinding. There are a total of 102 weapons and 119 accessories in Final Fantasy XIII. The weapons and accessories alike can and need to be upgraded to reach a second level. These second level evolutions of the different items also need to be held by you at some point during your playthrough if you want to earn this trophy. The annoying part starts pretty much right away, as you first need to hit a certain XP threshold before the game even allows you to get the item to the next level. So, just as in previous games, you already know the drill. You will be spending close to 100 hours jumping at every possible encounter and will need to somehow preserve your sanity as you kill the same enemy type over and over, in hopes it will finally drop the very rare but very needed material. A silver lining in all of this is that despite all of the weapons having 3 total levels, you only need to upgrade them to the second level, as the third level evolution for every weapon class is shared. So for example, out of the 8 gunblades, the weapon class that lightning starts with, you will only need to upgrade them 17 rather than 24 times. Another positive thing I just have to mention is how insanely dedicated the Final Fantasy community is, and how much that community helps each other out. Because listen to this, one quick Google search was all it took to lead me to this absolute bro right here, who did not only write a guide on the entire game, but went out of his way to also create an Excel sheet where you can manually keep track of which upgrades you have done, and can consequently also see which ones you're still missing, which gives you a fantastic overview of your whole situation. So if you are going for the Treasure Hunter trophy, then make sure you keep an eye on the items you've already leveled up, and keep one of the many different, fantastic guides out there by your side. That way, you might just be able to pull this off and earn the rarest achievement in the entire Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. At the second rank, we have Final Fantasy IX. Now, the lower we got on our list, the more I became convinced that the guy who works at Square Enix and thinks of different achievements for each Final Fantasy actually really hates the fanbase with passion. Because while the other trophies we've looked at so far were already pretty nasty, Final Fantasy IX is just straight up evil. Let me introduce to you the Hail to the King achievement with a completion rate of an ultra rare 1.9%. And due to how incredibly infamous this trophy already is, I'll just give a very brief summary. At one point during your playthrough of Final Fantasy IX, you will come across a minigame where 3 little girls ask Vivi to jump the rope. As you innocently agree to it and try for the first time, you will realize that there are some prizes you can win for hitting milestones like 20 or 50 jumps in a row, which can already be quite challenging to get, since the speed picks up after every few jumps and the pattern of the jumps changes consequently. The problem with this is that the Hail to the King achievement doesn't just want you to do 75 or even 100 jumps in a row. No, this abomination of a trophy asks you to flawlessly perform 1000 jumps in one go, without any mistake or slip up whatsoever, and without giving you any checkpoints throughout the ordeal either. Meaning that you will probably hit 500, 750 or maybe even 900 jumps multiple times in a row before losing your focus for just a split second and having to start all over again. The worst thing about this achievement as compared to the other ones we've looked at so far is that this one goes way beyond clubbing monsters to death to add them to your best cherry, or blowing them up with fire spells until they drop some shiny materials, which you could at least do while listening to some podcast or watching a show you like, since it doesn't require a lot of attention. Because in this case, you actually need to sit down and be absolutely focused for hours on end, as you must do perfectly timed jumps without getting hit by the rope a single time. Some desperate souls who have somehow managed to earn this achievement recommend that you turn all the ambient noise off and leave only the SFX on, so that you can better hear the rhythm you need to adjust to. Other players take it one step further and recommend that you don't even look at the screen while doing this, and solely rely on your hearing, having you enter an almost zen-like state where you need to become one with the rope. In all honesty, it is bizarre how absolutely evil this trophy is, as there is simply no other way to achieve it than putting yourself through dozens of hours of absolute focus, despite how mind-numbingly boring this challenge actually is. And do you want to know the worst thing? This isn't actually the rarest achievement in Final Fantasy IX, but the second rarest one. No, for real. 1000 perfectly timed jumps that will take you forever to pull off and probably destroy millions of your brain cells in the process is actually just the runner-up, so please forgive me for elaborating so much. But I honestly think that Final Fantasy IX's achievements are such a crime against humanity that I just had to prove my point. Now, for the actual rarest achievement in Final Fantasy IX. It is called Bloodlust and sits at a 1.4% completion, having you defeat 10,000 enemies. During a normal playthrough from start to finish, you will realistically defeat around 1,500 enemies, leaving you with 8,500 enemies that you still need to get rid of somehow. And all of these remaining enemies need to be slain without any real motivation or goal besides the Bloodlust trophy, since it is safe to say you will hit your max level well before even coming close to completing this. happiness. Sadly, just like it was with the All Hail to the King trophy, there's no real workaround for this trophy either. You will simply have to go to an area where lots of enemies spawn and mindlessly run up and down until you trigger an encounter. Different guides mention that you should be prepared to put in at the very least 10 to 20 hours of pressing the same buttons in extremely uneventful battles so that you can get the 10,000 enemies out of the way, which is just the perfect icing on a cake made of extremely difficult achievements if you're going for full completion in Final Fantasy IX. It is therefore not surprising at all that people have taken to extreme measures to counter these truly evil trophies, going as far as writing entire scripts that will do the rope jumps for you and additionally can also get the 10,000 enemies out of the way for you. The fact that nowadays you can just use scripts for these achievements truly sucks for the people who have done this in a legitimate way. But on the other hand, can we really blame the people that are just tired of it and don't want to deal with this crap any longer? If you are still convinced that you want to go for the ultra rare Bloodlust trophy in Final Fantasy IX, then your effort is commendable and I wish you the absolute best of luck, no matter the actual way you will be dealing with this achievement. Before we get to rank 1, I just want to thank all of you who are still watching. This is a very small channel and it honestly takes lots of work to make these videos. Just the script for this video alone is 12 pages long and it took me forever to research the actual achievements in hopes that I'm actually giving you guys reliable information. So with that said, please leave a like and a subscription if you enjoy the content and want to see more. Also remember that we have an entire playlist with different video game franchises and their respective rarest achievements, which you can check out right here. And if you have any other video game series in mind which you would like to see next, please let me know about that in the comments. And with all of that said, please excuse the hold up and let's move on to the rarest achievement in all of Final Fantasy. At rank 1, we have Final Fantasy XIV, which holds the rarest achievement in the entire series. The trophy in question is of course Living Off the Land 4, with a mind-boggling 0.3% completion rate, making it an exceptionally rare achievement and one of the rarest trophies that you can possibly earn. The reason we are including what is technically the same game twice is that it came with an entirely new achievement list this time around. And man, do these new achievements pack a punch, making the 1000 leaf quests from the original Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn seem like a walk in a park. To get Living Off the Land 4, you need to collect a total of 8,000 collectibles. That's right, 8,000 collectibles. But somehow, it still gets worse than that. Because rather than being able to start this insane grind right away, the ability to even gather these 8,000 collectibles is locked behind a few conditions. First of all, you need to own the Havensward DLC to even unlock the needed mechanics, which allow you to collect the materials you need. Locking certain mechanics behind DLC is sadly a common theme with Final Fantasy XIV, and unfortunately also affects the connected achievements. But let's assume that you bought the Havensward DLC and do own it. You now need to level your character up to level 50 and complete 2 specific quests. Once that is done, you can finally start collecting the 8,000 collectibles. But to add one final insult to injury, that part isn't really that straightforward either. Because while you can select the different items you want to find and collect through your menu, all the game really does to give you an idea where to find them is mark a pretty big blue circle on your map, which is the area where the different items can potentially be found. The one redeeming factor here is once again how incredibly dedicated the Final Fantasy community is, as there is once again a fantastic guide that goes into intricate detail about different ways to officially farm the 8,000 needed collectibles. Which obviously doesn't change the fact that you will be doing this for probably somewhat close to 150 hours straight. But through that guide, you will now at least have somewhat of a reference point. Personally, I would really advise against going for the achievement if you're not an absolute diehard fan of the game, because the only way I can realistically see this achievement being done is through years of constant playing with an active community, or at the very least a group of friends who will join you in the hunt. All in all, and despite its insane conditions, an achievement with a 0.3% rarity seems like the perfect fit for the rarest achievement in a series as amazing and colossal as Final Fantasy. And in case you are still wondering if you should actually go for the Living Off the Land 4 achievement, despite all the factors I just mentioned, just know that the reward will be incredibly worth all the pain and suffering, as a 0.3% completion rate means that just a select few people possess the rarest achievement in all of Final Fantasy, and if you persist, you may one day be one of them. So friends, we've once again made it to the end of the video. What did you think? Were you surprised by the different trophies and achievements at all? What was the one trophy or achievement you personally struggled the most with in Final Fantasy? Please let me know your thoughts and opinion down in the comments, and if you have any feedback whatsoever, make sure to let me know about that too. And now that we're done with the Final Fantasy series, how about we take a glimpse at the rarest achievement in Kingdom Hearts next? But whether you choose to keep watching or not, I really want to thank you so much for spending your precious time by watching my content. It truly means the world to me. Be well friends, and as always, I will see you in the next video.